The big news today, Artem Zub is back. So great to see Zuby back in the lineup. He left the third game of the year with a concussion. What are your expectations for him tonight?
Well, Ross, it's so awesome that Artem Zub will be back with Jake Sanderson.
Zuby!
The first pair is back like it needs to be. And surely Travis Green is looking at the other pairs and being like, we don't want to switch up anything. So the easy lineup decision is Travis Hamonic being the odd man out. Right?
On today's show, it's a game day preview. The Ottawa Senators back on home ice facing the New York Islanders.
And it's great to see a returning player coming back to the Sens. But Travis Green is making some interesting lineup decisions.
We'll get into that and more on today's Locked On Sens.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you hit your first $5 bet. Just head to FanDuel.com to get started. You can follow us on social media at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available everywhere you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Today is Thursday, November 7th, and Pilsy, how are you feeling after the letdown that was the 5-1 loss against Buffalo?
Ross, it's a burn the tape, flush it game. I don't even know what you're talking about. All I'm focused on is tonight's game up against the New York Islanders.
And beforehand, the Senators were just on the ice for morning skate. It was great to see David Perron back skating with his teammates. He has not been with the team since they left for Utah like 2 weeks ago. We know that he's going through some things off the ice personally. So great to see him back around his teammates. He will not play today. Neither will Shane Pinto. Did not take line rushes, but for another consecutive day, Pinto is back on the ice. Going to be huge when those guys get back. It'll allow some proper slotting. And now you're looking at the bottom six, Pilsy. I'm watching these next 2 days. They all know the situation. They know that when those two players are back, two guys are coming out of the lineup. So this is a bit of a tryout here for some of the bubble players.
Yeah, especially Ross, with those players back at practice, it's really reminding them, hey, two of these spots are going to be gone. I think it's pretty easy to say Zach Ostapchuk will be the odd man out once Shane Pinto returns. However, when Perron returns, and like you mentioned, great to see him back. I'm sure just being with the boys was uplifting for him and the rest of the team. But they're going to have to make a decision on the wing, who's going to come out. I have a feeling who it might be, but with the way Travis Green is making some of these lineup decisions, all bets are off, really.
The big news today, Artem Zub is back. So great to see Zuby back in the lineup. He left the third game of the year with a concussion. What are your expectations for him tonight?
Well, Ross, it's so awesome that Artem Zub will be back with Jake Sanderson. The first pair is back like it needs to be. And surely Travis Green is looking at the other pairs and being like, we don't want to switch up anything. So the easy lineup decision is Travis Hamonic being the odd man out. Right?
No, wrong. Travis Hamonic will play. He's back with Tyler Kleven. Jacob Bernard-Docker is going to be the odd man out. And Pilsy, I don't know how I can rationalize this decision. Tyler Kleven and Jacob Bernard-Docker were playing such consistent bottom pair minutes. It just feels like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I just think that they're overthinking this decision to keep Travis Hamonic in the lineup. I don't want to beat a dead horse. People understand that he's been the weak link on the top pair, and I get it. He was okay in sheltered minutes in the first few games. But you found a pair that worked here with Kleven and JBD. It just feels like overcoaching.
And Ross, it's especially frustrating because we kind of speculated that the reason that Travis Hamonic was on that top pair is because Travis Green liked the way that the other pairs were playing and didn't want to mix up that chemistry. So why then would you make the decision to take away the chemistry that bottom pair has, the Nodak Sens pair of JBD and Clevin, and put Hamonic there. I'm just really not sure. I have a feeling, and I hope that I'm correct, that Travis Green is likely going to kind of spot start Hamonic and JBD on that third pair with Clevin. So maybe this is just, hey, we're going to give Hamonic this one, see how it goes, then get JBD back in the mix. Because in my opinion, JBD hasn't done anything to deserve being a healthy scratch. And you can argue that Hamonic was placed out of position, which I think everybody should know and understand if you're watching the same hockey that I am. Travis Green especially. Sean Tierney of the analytics department of the Ottawa Senators should especially be able to point out some things. But I don't think it's fair to say that even moving him down to the bottom pair is the best recipe for success for this team, because JBD plays a really good shut down, physical blocking shots type of game that you want to see from your bottom pair. And when you think about it, the one issue we kind of had with that bottom pair, Ross, is, okay, Tyler Clevin, JBD, two young guys, and neither one of them is really an efficient puck mover. Well, putting Hamonic down on that bottom pair doesn't really help out the puck moving problems of that bottom pair either, unless you're looking for pucks to be wrapped around the boards from a clap bomb from center ice. So this is a very peculiar coaching decision by Travis Green.
And the numbers would show that. Kevin Lee bringing these stats out from Natural Stat Trick. Tyler Clevin with Travis Hamonic this year, a 37% Corsi 4, so shot attempts when they're on the ice at 5-on-5, and 40% of the expected goal share. So that takes into account shot placement, shot area on the ice, how dangerous the shots are. Clevin with JBD at 5-on-5, 58% of the shot share and 59% of the expected goals. Like, that to me is the biggest indicator that Travis Hamonic is not a better fit with Tyler Clevin than Jacob Bernard Docker. So this is going to be a situation to monitor, not only tonight, which I'll be hawk-eyeing when they're on the ice. I need to see who's going to be the safety valve, because you got to think, in a world where I'm trying to understand what the coaching is doing, you'd think that would be Travis Hamonic, the veteran, the presence out there. But the panic with the puck that he's shown this year isn't really going to calm a young Tyler Clevin, who is finding his footing and looks great on a nightly basis. So this is a situation we will be following here on Locked On Sens. But let's get to the top end of this. Artem Zub back with Jake Sanderson. This, to me, is as much about Jake Sanderson as it is about Artem Zub. I'm expecting a bounce-back performance. Over the last few games, Sanderson has not looked like himself. I think he could settle down here very quickly back with Zub.
Yeah, it's so great to see Artem Zub back. I think Sens fans really understand and appreciate how important he is to this team and how important he is to that top pair. Because if Jake Sanderson was going to continue on the statistical trends that he had been going on with Travis Hamonic, the top pair going up against other teams' top offensive units would continue to slide, and this Ottawa Senators team would not be able to pick up momentum at all. And we've seen the way momentum has slipped away from this team in games. So I'm so glad Artem Zub's back, Ross. It's such a beautiful thing.
And he's barely played this year, right? He got hurt so early in that game against LA. So only 2 full games. Him and Sanderson have played 29 and a half minutes together. No goals for, no goals against when they've been on the ice. Again, very small sample size, but we're looking forward to seeing that. We're looking forward to seeing a home game. The Senators are 5-1 on home ice tonight, and it's an important game. The out-of-town scoreboard last night sucked. Detroit got a win in regulation. That, to me, was the biggest, damn it. Couldn't get a loss against Chicago. Who loses in Chicago, right, Pilsy?
No comment. I don't want to talk about that. But yeah, come on, Chicago. Let's go.
And then the Washington Capitals get a regulation win over the Nashville Predators. They're really starting to pull away here in the early going this season. The Ovechkin goal watch again. Another goal for Ovi. He's only 34 goals away from breaking the NHL's all-time record. Tonight, the Ottawa Senators have a great opportunity to beat a team that is not only struggling, they are the overtime merchants of the NHL over the last couple of years. They've already got 2 OT loser points this year. Last year, Pilsy, they had 11 loser points under their first coach. Add another 5 under Patrick Waugh. That is 16 loser points last year in the standings for the New York Islanders. But that's a veteran team. We'll get to their lineup in the next segment. Veteran teams are able to get points. They're able to stack them up. And when they have players like Bo Horvat pulling off what he did in the shootout the other night, you're going to get a couple extra points off of that. So how can the Senators get their game to a point where they don't have to worry about it getting to extras? We got keys to victory. We'll look at the lineups, and Anton Forsberg will start in goal. You're looking at Locked On Senators. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys know FanDuel is North America's #1 sportsbook and the official online sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and more, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you place your bets.
Pilsy, do you like this? Do you like this tonight? I see you're wearing the Bengals jersey. FanDuel's got a same-game parlay already cooking for you. Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, and Zay Flowers, anytime touchdown parlay. That's a lot of touchdowns to put in one, but a $10 bet would win you $115. I don't know. What do you think?
Ross, you read my mind. I'm looking at Thursday night bets for sure for Thursday Night Football. I would probably take out the Derrick Henry anytime touchdown and the Zay Flowers anytime touchdown score. I think the Bengals are going to roll over the Ravens here and take back their rightful place, hopefully eventually, of the AFC North. But if you're not a football fan, you could check out hockey as well. The NHL, the Ottawa Senators are sitting at a -146. And the over-under is set at 5.5. So check it out today, guys. FanDuel.com.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. If you need last-minute tickets to tonight's game against the New York Islanders, why not head to Game Time to make sure you get them at the lowest prices? Game Time has everything, not only hockey, but all sports, theater, music, you name it, you can get your tickets on Game Time. Game Time also has a new feature called Game Time Picks to make getting tickets even easier. It'll filter out the fluff and only show you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can get your seat views. I love the panoramic views. You can see it before you buy. They also have the lowest price guarantee. If you can send them the same tickets in the same section for less, they will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Pilsy, game day for the Ottawa Senators. It is a 7 o'clock puck drop as long as the power stays on at the CTC.
We could use a little delay, Ross. Nothing wrong with the half-hour power outage delay.
Last time it worked, Ottawa got an 8-1 win. The Senators at home this year are a completely different team than on the road. Like, how do you try to rationalize the extreme splits of 5-1 at home and 1-5 on the road?
I have no clue, Ross. Like you expect to get a boost at home. I think that's common knowledge between sports fans. And I mean, it's even reflected on betting sites. FanDuel, the home teams usually have some sort of advantage when it comes to the money lines. So it's clearly a thing, but you don't want to be only winning games at home and always losing games on the road. Ross, the only road game they've won was their first ever game in Salt Lake City. Like, you don't get to go to a new city and play a new franchise every time you're on the road. So they got to figure it out. However, I don't mind winning games at home. It's nice to return home when you know you've got a good schedule there and up against a banged up New York Islanders team. This might just be the perfect thing for the Ottawa Senators to get back on track after a 5-1 road loss to the Sabres.
Senators have the 5th best points percentage at home this season, behind Winnipeg, Los Angeles, Washington, and the Vegas Golden Knights, who are 8-0 at home.
Yeah.
Despite the Senators getting ever so close, leading with 4 minutes left in that game. But you look at what this home record can do. It's not only the way they play at home, it's the way they defend at home. They've only allowed 16 goals, and 7 were in one game, okay? So 9 goals in 5 of the 6 games this season. Of course, LA game got out of hand, but they were able to get that win. But you look at the way they're clicking. Their power play is incredible at home. The number 1 home power play in the league, 43.5%. And we know that overall the power play is taking a bit of a dip because they're 0 for their last 13. Key to victory for me tonight. This is a veteran New York Islanders team and a team who overall, typically over the years, and I'm looking at it right now, they are an average to below average team on the PK. They're worse. They're 66%. They're 30th in the league in PK percentage this year. So my key to victory is let's get the power play back on track. If you score 2 power play goals tonight, I'm convinced the Senators win the game.
Ross, you lead into my key to victory, so I'll just kind of echo and emphasize what you're saying. The Senators have to dominate on special teams. I know we talked about they can't rely on that for sustainable success, but you talked about how the penalty kill for the Islanders is bad. The power play is not very good either. They sit at 28th in the league at 13.6%. So I know we've been talking about it's the 5-on-5 game the Sens got to figure out, but you're only focusing on the 5-on-5 game when the special teams start to fall apart. Let's get back on track special teams wise. I want the Senators to win the special teams battle tonight.
Let's look at tonight's lineup. We already talked about the new insertion. Artem Zub back in his rightful spot beside Jake Sanderson. But up front, nothing changes. Tim Stützle will center Brady Tkachuk and Ridley Gregg. Josh Norris is between Claude Giroux and Drake Batherson. Zach Ostapchuk between Noah Gregor and Michael Amadio, and Adam Gaudette between Nick Cousins and Zach McEwen. Sanderson Zub, Shabbat Jensen, Clevin, and Hamonic. And Anton Forsberg starts in goal. Pilsy, we'll get your thoughts on Forsberg starting in goal in the next segment. Let's jump to our Locked On players to watch.
My Locked On player to watch tonight is going to be number 85, Jake Sanderson. He gets his old buddy Zuby back on the pair with him, number 2. So I want to see Jake Sanderson get back to being the Jake Sanderson we know. I don't want to see, Ross, when we get what are those things called? Game cards?
Stat cards.
Stat cards. Thank you. Shout out stat cards. When we see the stat cards, I want to see Jake Sanderson on the upper half of the Ottawa Senators stat cards, not in the bottom 2 anchored beside Travis Hamonic. And with Artem Zub back, there's no reason he can't do it. He's averaging 24 minutes and 32 seconds time on ice every game. Let's hope that time on ice is more efficient, and he's doing a better job of shutting down opponents' top lines, especially, Ross, when we get to the Islanders. They are a banged-up team, like we mentioned. If the top pair can stifle that top line, I feel like I say that a lot, but especially up against an injured team that doesn't generate a lot of offense, that's going to be huge for this team. So I'm locked on to Jake Sanderson.
Couple Jake Sanderson stats here for you. The Ottawa Senators last 7 games, starting with that shutout win in Utah. Sanderson has 1 assist, no goals, and is -5 in his last 7 games.
Yikes.
But now let's get to the good part. This season, Jake Sanderson at home has 8 points in 6 games. All of Sanderson's offense has come on home ice. He has 0 points on the road so far this season, and he's -7. But he's +2 at home, 8 points in 6 games. I like that pick. I'm going with Drake Batherson. Batherson is still a point per game player, 12 points in 12 games, but he's been held off the score sheet for the last 3 straight. That line in particular, Giroux, Norris, and Batherson, was awful in Buffalo. Not good. Tonight, they have an opportunity again on home ice where the team has had success, where they should be able to control the matchups against the second units for the other team. This is a huge opportunity, and I'm calling it. It's my old COVID call. 3-point night for Drake Batherson. 3-point night. I'm expecting a big showing from Batherson against the Islanders.
I like it, Ross. That Giroux, Norris, Batherson line is stacked. Like, there's no reason why they can't have success up against other teams' second line, second defense pairs. I want to see them get cooking again. So Drake Batherson, let's go. Drake the Snake.
Love it. Also, 8 points.
Jake the Snake. Sorry. What am I talking about? Jake the Snake.
Jake the Snake and Drake and Bake.
Drake and Bake. That's not bad.
Let's Drake and Bake. Drake and Josh, the old show here. Yep. We know him and Norris that got that chemistry. Let's see it tonight. Also, I mean, you could do this for most of the team, the way they've struggled on the road. But Batherson is no different. 8 points in 6 games at home, whereas on the road, he's got 4 points in 6 games. I mean, Josh Norris still hasn't scored a goal on the road, but he's got 4 on home ice. So yeah, that line in particular, this is a night for them to go out and do their thing. And I'm hoping that Drake Batherson is a huge part of that. On the other side, we'll look at the New York Islanders, what they're bringing to Ottawa. We'll check in on our old pal, Jean-Gabriel Pageau, and the decision to start Anton Forsberg. Plus, a lot of talk about Brady Tkachuk's fight against Buffalo. So I crunched the numbers at the Senators' record is all time when Brady Tkachuk fights. That's coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Mary J's. Mary J's is a locally owned cannabis dispensary in the Ottawa area. Started off with 3 best friends making a life-changing decision and following their dreams. Through hard work and dedication, they now have 4 stores in the Ottawa area. You can find them at Riverside South, Orleans, Greeley, and Russell. Mary J's offers the best and newest products in the market, and they're adding new stuff to the menu every single week to keep it fresh. They got competitive pricing. In fact, guys, they're going to price match any store in Ottawa. That means you're guaranteed to get the best price around when you shop at Mary J's. They have the best customer service too by having the friendliest bud tenders who are always ready to help you out. One of the owners, Dashy, is a diehard Sens fan. You can usually find him at one of the stores. So go say what up to Dashy.
What up, Dashy?
Pick his brain about the Sens and all the latest, greatest products that Mary J's has to offer. And check out their website and get yourself a loyalty card. Mary J's.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Indeed is driven for the search for better. And when you're hiring, don't you want the best candidates? So don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed, the matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors. That's according to Indeed stats, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates faster than Tim Stützle flies up the ice. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. So join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Because you listen to Locked On Sens, you're going to get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support us by hearing about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. All right, Pilsy, game day edition of Locked On Senators. Your team every day, 7 o'clock puck drop at the CTC. Still seats available on the Glebe Central Pub shuttle. So if you want to be among Sens fans heading to the game, get your tickets, GlebeCentralPub.com, and get on the bus to and from the CTC. All right, Pilsy, before we look at the New York Islanders lineup, get our lookout players, the decision to start Anton Forsberg, is that a surprise to you tonight?
Yes, I think it is a surprise, Ross, because I really am of the mind when you get a number 1 starting goaltender, especially a guy like Linus Ullmark, who's mentioned he doesn't want to be in tandem land anymore. He feels like he deserves the respect to be a number 1 guy. You got to give him the opportunity to bounce back after a bad game. Now, I'm sure Travis Green, the coaching staff, the stats department, the analytical department of the Sens might be looking, hey, Forsberg's been the hotter guy. Let's get him in this game. get back in the win column, back at home, and then we'll go back to Allmark after. I guess that's the approach. And I don't hate it because Forsberg has really turned his game around the last couple. He's 2 shutouts in his last 3 games. Like, what? You can't really ask much more from the guy. But I don't love that Linus Ullmark is not being afforded the opportunity to have a bounce back game, especially, and maybe this will come back to bite me because I was too optimistic against the Sabres, but a banged up team in the Islanders that don't have a lot of offensive firepower, that would be a good get-right game at home, in my opinion, for Ullmark. But hopefully Forsey can keep things going and shut the door.
I'm trying to think of a way to play devil's advocate here because, frankly, I agree with you. The only thing that I'm looking at here is the next 2 games at Boston Saturday, at Toronto on Tuesday. My expectation is that Ullmark gets both of those starts.
Especially Boston. You to give Ullmark the opportunity to go up against Boston in a revenge game in Boston. Like, that's a no-brainer. You got to do that.
So then plus Toronto, and then since he played against Buffalo, then you'd be looking at 4 straight starts, and Forsey coming off a shutout then wouldn't have played in 2+ weeks at that point. Or, yeah, it would be almost 2 weeks if he gets the Flyers as his next game.
I don't if Forsey doesn't start this game, I think he would have started one of the Boston or Toronto games.
Right. So I probably lean Ullmark for both of those games. So if it's a spot start in terms of knowing the opponent and knowing the situation at home, then I can come to terms with it. But I do want to see a run here eventually where Ullmark plays 4, 5, 6 games in a row and finds himself into a rhythm. Let us know in the comments. I know it was a very divisive topic yesterday of who should start, and the people were right. It is Anton Forsberg in goal tonight. Let's look at Anton Forsberg's career numbers against the New York Islanders. He is 2-6-0 with an .891 save percentage and a 3.68 goals against average. Where's Kevin Mandolese? We need to get him in goal here tonight. Hey,
yeah,
that was such a great story a couple of years ago.
Let's see. I'm quickly looking up Linus Ullmark against the Islanders to see if there's a big discrepancy here.
Okay, Jacques Martin.
I mean, well, not much better, but 9-6-1 with a 908 save percentage and a 255 goals against. So that's a lot more average, but whatever. All right.
Away she goes. It's Anton Forsberg taking on this New York Islanders team. Their top line, Bo Horvat at center, between Anders Lee at left wing and Jean-Gabriel Pageau playing top line right wing on the Islanders squad. Then you've got Brock Nelson at center between Maxime Tsiplikov and Kyle Palmieri. You've got Casey Cizikas between Pierre Engvall and Simon Holmstrom. And then Kyle McLean is between Hudson Fasching and Oliver Wahlstrom. On the back end, it's Ryan Pulock with Scott Mayfield, Isaiah George with Noah Dobson, and Dennis Chalovsky with, no, it's not Ben Hutton. Which Hutton is this here?
Grant Hutton.
Grant Hutton. Now, that's got to be a lifetime minor leaguer, no?
I don't know a whole lot about our guy, Grant Hutton Ross.
He's played 20 NHL games. It'll be his 21st tonight. 2 years ago, he played 16 and then 2 and 2. But yes, he's played parts of 7 seasons with the AHL's Bridgeport Sound Tigers. Now, a big reason for this is the injuries on the back end. Adam Pelech, not in the lineup tonight. Alexander Romanov, not in the lineup tonight. This is an inexperienced blue line. Isaiah George was a player that we profiled a couple of years ago in the NHL draft process. He was a London Knight prospect and then is in his first year of pro hockey. Played 4 games in the minors, and he's already into his second NHL game. So he's only played 6 pro games, Pilsy, and he's on the second pair with Noah Dobson, their most important defender overall. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, as well as how this Islanders team just grinds it out. They're not the flashiest group, but they just grind it out and have been without their star player, as well as Matthew Barzal is out of the lineup with injury.
No player either.
Your lookout player to watch.
My lookout player to watch is going to be Noah Dobson, number 8, Ross. I was reading Arthur Staple. He wrote an article in The Athletic about the New York Islanders, and he was mentioning that Noah Dobson has not been the Noah Dobson of last year, where he absolutely lit it up. 70 points for Dobson last year, 10 goals and 60 assists. So clearly, this is a guy that can put up points. However, this season, 0 goals, 6 assists. He's playing 24 minutes, 40 seconds. So similar to Jake Sanderson numbers time on ice. He has 4 power play points. But Arthur Staple really noted that Romanov actually had been the best defenseman for the Islanders moving forward, and he's a big loss for this team. So having said that, and then obviously you mentioned the other players on the back end that are injured, Noah Dobson really needs to step things up here, and he's a guy, Ross, that takes a lot of shots. That's why I wanted to highlight him, because the Islanders rely on him for offense big time. Look at his shots on goal the last games: 5, 5, 3, 1. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 7, 6. Like 7 shots in the game for a defenseman is quite a lot. So if you want to shut down and slow down the Islanders offense, it all starts on the back end with number 8, in my opinion.
2 of the 3 Islanders in the NHL will be taking part in tonight's game. Noah Dobson, the pride of PEI. So is Zach McEwen. Only Ross Johnston, the other NHLer from PEI, in the lineup. You know who's from our hometown? Jean-Gabriel Pageau, my lookout player to watch. Hopefully he only has 1 chicken parm tonight, because I don't need a 4-goal performance coming against the Ottawa Senators, but just the type of player that every Sens fan will always cheer for when he's not playing the Sens. This guy, he's just the honey badger, right? And for great reason. He's a hard-nosed player and a guy who I'm a little interested to see him playing right wing and on the top line tonight. Yeah. But what he does best is snapback faceoffs. This year, Jean-Gabriel Pageau is 61% in the dot, which is among the league leaders with over 150 faceoffs taken. He's won 103 and only lost 66. Super impressive. And it just goes with his career average is 54% in the dot. Pilsy, in the 6 years, can you believe it's been 6 years since he's been on the New York Islanders? He's a 56% man in the dot. So I'm curious to see him on the wing. Will he take a lot of faceoffs? We know he's going to be taking them shorthanded tonight for the Islanders. This year, he's got 3 goals, 2 assists in 13 games, and he's averaging over 16 minutes and 40 seconds.
And Ross, you talk about him being a big part of their penalty killing unit. He's actually on the 2nd penalty kill unit, which is surprising, but on the top power play unit on the right wing as well. So if we talked about the importance of special teams, at least according to Daily Faceoffs lines, the importance of winning faceoffs when you're on the penalty kill or on the power play is absolutely enormous. So Jean-Gabriel Pageau is huge for the Islanders in that sense.
And the thing with the Senators that I noticed on Tuesday in particular, where they went 0 for on the power play again, they were losing a lot of those first faceoffs, and it just crushes your momentum right off the top. And hopefully that's an area the Senators can improve in tonight's game. 7:00 start against the Islanders. Let us know in the comments on YouTube what or who you're watching for in tonight's game. Okay, Pilsy, this I don't want to spend too much time on, and I get that it's a bit of a trivial statistic, but after Brady Tkachuk had his first fight of the year on Tuesday and the Senators lost, well, they allowed the goal when he was in the box there for the instigator.
That was the TSN turning point of the game, in my opinion.
And it's in the first period. So I was like, what's the Sens record when Brady Tkachuk gets into a fight? And if you follow us on Twitter at Sens Central, you saw me post this last night. The record is not good. When he fights, the Senators are 8, 24, and 2 in 34 games. Now, funny enough, the best season the Sens had when he fought the most, he had 7 fights rather, so not the most, he had 8 in another year. When he had 7 fights in the COVID season with no fans, the Sens were 5-2, which is so ironic because the whole point, I get it's firing up your bench, but it's firing up the crowd as well and all that. If you take out when fans are in the building, the Senators have 3 wins in 27 games when Brady Tkachuk fights. They're 3, 22, and 2. It's such a peculiar stat, and I had people right away jump in the comments, and I get this thought process that he fights when the games are out of reach at the end. Frankly, I found more 2-minute roughing and 10-minute misconducts at the end of games that I don't count in this. A lot of these fights, and I went back to the start of the 2021-22 season after that All-Canadian division, and I went back, and you can find it all on Twitter. I'm not going to bore you with all the numbers, but A lot of the fights are in the first and second periods in games that are one goal, one way or another. It's not the case that he just fights at the end of games. He's more important on the ice. And I love a good Brady Tkachuk fight. Don't get me wrong. But he doesn't need to be fighting on, like, if Timmy got hurt on a clean hit, go for it. And I get it's a split-second decision, but he was fine. So it feels like,
and it was a clean hit.
It was a super clean hit, and Timmy popped right back up. Take a number. Get him later in the game. I just didn't think that they needed that in that moment. Maybe he felt like Buffalo was all over them, which they were early in that game, and felt like it would also help change the momentum. Brady admitted it was weird fighting a friend, an old line mate. Jordan Greenway played together at Boston University. I just think you need Brady on the ice. And then Ottawa got a power play soon after, and they don't have their best power play net front guy. It just really kind of was a snowball effect. And I get that this was an exaggerated example of it, but let's just see Brady do his thing out there. If the time calls for a fight, let's do it. But let's see him work on getting the pucks in goal tonight, because he's been doing that great. He's got at least a point in 11 out of 12 games. So I don't want this to be misconstrued as Brady Tkachuk slander, all that. It just is interesting to note that the last time the Senators won a game that he got in a fight was the one against Jacob Trouba at Madison Square Garden. That's 12 straight games where he's fought and the Sens lose.
And the irony of that, Ross, is that is the exact perfect time when you want Brady Tkachuk to fight and the right opponent. Like, if you told me Brady Tkachuk's going to fight Jacob Trouba, center ice, Madison Square Garden, hell yeah, go for it, Brady. If you told me Brady Tkachuk's going to fight Greenway in the first period in Buffalo, maybe hold off on that one. And the results are there. And I think, Ross, you can even take fighting out of the equation here. Let's just say, for how many total games has Brady Tkachuk fought in?
34.
So let's just say for 34 games, you pick Brady up and put him in timeout for 5 minutes. No fight. Like, don't even talk about the fight momentum swing, whether he needs to do it, the player he's fighting up against. Take all that out of the equation. Taking one of your best players and your captain out of the game for 5 minutes alone is the biggest detriment to why the Sens probably aren't able to succeed when Brady Tkachuk gets in a fight, because, especially like you mentioned, Ross, they get a power play and Brady's in the box. Doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So it's unfortunate that that's the case, because I think it goes without saying, both of us love watching a good tilt, especially when someone like Brady, who can really chuck them and chucks them with passion. We love seeing that. But it's getting to a point now where this isn't an Ottawa Senators rebuilding team where you're just trying to get people's respect and you're pissed off when people disrespect you. They're going for more now. As Brady Tkachuk said, we want more. Well, then you have to learn to have the discipline, I'll say, to not get in those kinds of fights, and especially not get in those kinds of fights with much lesser players. Like, that's a great trade-off for the Buffalo Sabres. They do that 10 times out of 10, not doing it early in the game. And the last thing we want is for Brady Tkachuk to get a hand injury or some kind of injury off a fight as well. So it's unfortunate that it's that skewed, that the Sens lose that often when he gets in a fight. But I think maybe that's an important lesson to learn. And that's something the Senators are going to have to, the leadership group, Brady Tkachuk especially, is going to have to learn and mature from and get a little bit more disciplined moving forward.
That's a Locked On Sens exclusive stat as I manually track that through game logs year over year over year. And then I asked our good friend, Mr. T. Raynard, I said, what about Chris Neil? What's the record when Chris Neil fought in games? And he fought in 166 games. The Senators were 87, 64, and 13 plus 2 ties. I don't know if some of our younger audience remember those back in the day. But Pilsy, the craziest stat about that is Mr. T tells us that in 10 games, he fought twice.
Wow, man, that's classic.
10 games with 2 fights, and then he even doubled down. The Sens were 6-4-0 when Chris Neil fought twice in a single game. What an animal.
And those fought twice games are probably against the same players. Like, Chris Neil probably didn't get the best of him in the first one. He's like, no, we're going again. I want a better match here. But, Ross, this is a perfect argument. Chris Neil, 5 minutes in the box, doesn't affect your overall game plan that much. And you're probably on the right side of the exchange where Chris Neil goes and fights one of the top defensemen or a top 6 forward. You're loving that trade-off every single time. So that, I think, is a perfect example of the trade-off of, I don't want to, well, no, I was going to say I don't want to call Chris Neil a goon, but he was a bit of a goon.
Tough guy, enforcer.
Tough guy, enforcer. That's a better narrative to say. Superstar, yeah. But that's where it makes sense for those guys to have that role. And I think it's being made clear here. So great job with that one, Ross. That's a good little rabbit hole to go down.
And if anybody wants to help us out here with this stat, because people are like, how can you compare this to someone else? And I'm trying to think, like, he's such a unique player. If somebody could go back and check Gabriel Landeskog with Colorado in his early 20s when it was a bad team, I'm curious to know how many fights he got in and what the Avalanche record is. So please put that in the YouTube comments. Pillsy, before we get to your final thoughts, I got one, and I want to shout out on Twitter our friend AJMR at Cash Honeybee. Love that. Not only is Linus Ullmark not starting tonight, Jeremy Swayman's not starting for Boston. So he wonders if it's a bit of a mental reset for those two guys before they go head-to-head on Saturday night at TD Garden.
I love that. Yeah, I want to see them go head-to-head for sure. Obviously, I would prefer to see Jonas Korpisalo in net opposing the Ottawa Senators. We all know the Ottawa Senators would be able to exploit some of his weaknesses, I'm sure. But
shooting?
Yeah, well, shooting from and scoring on first two shots.
And put Hamonic in goal because he doesn't track pucks well from far away. So let that guy clap it in.
Yeah, but it's great theater having Swayman and Ullmark go up against each other. So I'm down for that.
It's going to be awesome. And our guy Ryan Hinman on Twitter, he posts every single day the scoreboard watch, and it's just great to see. And he's got the daily playoff odds, which obviously change drastically by multiple percentage points every single day. So it's not something to hang your hat on. And it is funny to note Money Puck has the Senators at a 57% chance at playoffs, and the Athletic is at 42. I don't know if Scott Wheeler got a hold of their model there for a second. He's dropping our percentage points a bit, but we are rooting against the Bruins tonight. They're playing the Calgary Flames. So go Flames, go. And then elsewhere, we're rooting for the Devils over the Habs. We're rooting for the Predators over the Panthers, although that one's probably a little bit obsolete in terms of the Senators catching the Panthers this year. And then we're rooting for the Flyers to beat the Lightning tonight. And Buffalo is in Madison Square Garden. So look, if we're saying, hey, tough place to play, let's chalk that up as a loss. I know they deserve better. The teams around them have to lose there too. So we need the Rangers to come up big tonight. Pillsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
No final thoughts for me today, Ross.
We had a couple there.
Yeah, we mixed in a couple. So I'll just say go Sens go Bengals go. It's going to be a good Thursday night sports night. Let's go.
See you in the postcast after tonight's game, 7 o'clock puck drop. And again, if you're looking to go to the game, make sure to join the Glebe Central Pub Shuttle for great vibes and a return trip for just $17. For today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.